Episode number 170 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. So in today's episode, I wanted to talk about a subject that I hear more and more from my patients and my clients, and that is about the fertility journey overwhelm. And as you probably know, you're probably listening to this because you're going through your own fertility journey, that we have so much information in our hands and at our fingertips these days. And it's great. You can go down the rabbit hole of Google, but sometimes having too much information can create more of a frazzled feeling. And too many options can also be very overwhelming. Not only that, you get different opinions from different doctors, and you also see what other people do. So it can be even more confusing because something that works for somebody else may not work for you. And it's hard to figure out what is the right thing. Another thing that I hear that is expressed a lot is the overwhelm with all the to-dos. So all the supplements that you need to take, what you need to do as far as diet goes, and the overwhelm of having to try to feel less stress. It's almost like another pressure of not feeling stressed. So because you know that that's what everybody says, just take it easy. You can't stress too much because it's not good for your hormones and your body. So that's a whole other overwhelm. So you're getting overwhelmed, you're getting overstimulated with information, and at the same time, you're supposed to feel like de-stress. So all of that is it's a lot to really know how to handle. So if you are going through this, I just want to let you know what you're feeling is completely valid. And a lot of people express the same feelings. You are not alone. A lot of times people feel like they're the only ones going through it, but I just want to tell you that you are not alone if you are going through that feeling. I hear it from my patients every single day. I hear it from my clients. And although I do work with my patients to manage that, and that is something that I wanted to talk to you about today, to know that yes, you cannot change the overwhelm, you cannot change the information, but what you can do is at least provide yourself some tools, and I'll go over that at the end of this, on how to manage it so that it's not so overwhelming. So first, I do want to discuss the different things that can cause the overwhelm. So one of the first things that a lot of people do, mostly, couples that are trying to conceive, thinking that everything's going to be fine, and then finding month to month to month that things aren't working. The first thing that everybody does, because it's so tempting, is go down the rabbit hole of Dr. Google and look into every single symptom that you have and what you can possibly have. And what happens is, although it's great information, it's great to do your research for sure. What can happen is that you can start thinking that you have things that you may not have. So you may think that you have like endometriosis, or you'll start to almost self-diagnose. Because when you start to look into information or you have a question, it starts something called like an open loop. I don't know if you've heard of NLP, but basically an open loop is like, it's almost like the beginning of your thought process where you're trying to figure out information, and your mind wants to close that loop with a conclusion or an answer. The problem is you're not going to truly close that loop. But what you will do most likely is start to try to close that loop and give yourself answers that may not really be applicable to your specific needs or condition. And the best way to do that is to see a qualified physician and not just go into Google and try to figure it out. Now, that being said, I am a very big believer that your body knows and that we do have inner wisdom that can guide us. And I'll talk about that later on. So that's kind of two separate things. But what happens is when we get too much information, when we're bombarded and we have too much stimulus, that actually takes us away from the answer within, like that inner wisdom. It actually distracts us away from that. So even though you want to close that loop and you feel like the only way to do that is to look outside of you and get information and read other people's stories and look at what you should have for your body based on what you find on Google, it seems like that's the way to go. And it almost, you're pulled to doing that. However, a lot of times it actually makes you go around in circles. A lot of times it also gets people to order the wrong supplements or supplements that are really not meant for them. And then it also makes you feel more exhausted and more confused than you started. So there are certain things that you can do to get yourself back to that grounding place where you're able to make these decisions from a place of being centered and a place of clarity. And another thing is getting different opinions from family members, from just everybody that you're talking to, also going online and seeing other people's stories and what they did that actually was like their final golden key to getting pregnant, whatever it is. That might work perfectly for one person, but it might be really not good for you. So that can also be confusing, and it can take you on another tangent, which may make it, again, longer for you to figure out what's going on. The best way to do it is to go to a qualified physician. This is what I suggest to everybody, even my patients. If you are going through fertility challenges, the best thing to do is go and get your labs done at a qualified physician. Go to either your OB or a gynecologist, or if you feel that it might be a little longer and it's more complicated, that's a good starting point is the OB or gynecologist. But if you want to get more in depth with testing and understanding what's really going on, then I would find a reproductive endocrinologist who can get all the blood work and baseline testing that you would need. They know a lot better what to test for because that's what they do. However, just wanted to kind of mention and throw it out there that they also are very used to doing IVF and doing medicated cycles. So keep in mind that they're probably going to suggest things that you may not really want to do. You may still want to try just naturally before doing anything, just to kind of throw it out there because that's how they work. That's what they do. That's how they've been trained. However, some of them will say try naturally for a little while. If you have any issues, come back. So I'm not going to kind of generalize it on all reproductive endocrinologists, but just to kind of mention that that is what they're used to doing and that's what they're used to dealing with. So I would definitely advise to do that. Most of the time, testing is covered by insurance because you're getting that diagnosis and you're trying to uncover if something else is going on. Treatments, however, that's a whole other story. Can be or maybe not, but at least starting out knowing that you're looking into what's going on, it'll save you a lot of time anyway, and it'll also save you some heartache in the sense of trying to close that loop but not really knowing the answers or not really figuring it out. So that's one of the things. Another thing is getting an opinion from a doctor. And I always say this, if it doesn't align with you, get a couple of different opinions. It can be overwhelming to get a lot of opinions, but I would suggest when it comes to doctors, that's a different story. So if you get a lot of opinions from family members, obviously all those things can be confusing, but with a doctor and when it comes to health, it's always important to get second or third opinions if you feel that you still don't feel aligned with the answer or even the protocol that you're given. But at least when you are getting tests done and getting some answers from doctors that you're talking to, at least you know that you're basing it on something and you're not speculating and looking and listening to so many different stories from other people. At least you can figure out what's going on within yourself. And I suggest this to even people who are trying to get pregnant naturally. They don't want anything extra. It's just good to do a baseline of tests. It gets you to understand what's happening in your body. And another thing that could be very overwhelming is when you start to look at what is good for fertility diet. What should you do in order to avoid toxins? I mean, all of these different things that we are being given. And it was a big wake-up call for me because when I first started learning all of this and working with people in the fertility world, I was very excited to tell them what worked, what didn't, based on the research that I was learning. But I realized very quickly that it is very overwhelming to think about exactly what to eat, how to eat, what to do. And I will say this, it's great if you can eat the right things. It's great if you could take the right supplements. It's great if you can do the right exercise. All of those things are great. But what's even greater is if you can find a way to balance your life and your mind. Because if you come from a place of overwhelm, it's going to eventually really exhaust you. And it's not going to be fun. Like life stops feeling fun. And it already feels that way when you're facing a challenge such as fertility challenges, or experiencing that with your partner. So there's so many different challenges that you're already facing, and it's important to have some kind of way of grounding yourself. So I really do believe that when you do go within, you can find these answers, and you do have this amazing intuition that you can connect with. One of the ways to do that, and the reason why sometimes you can feel disconnected by that, is by getting just bombarded with too much information. So sometimes taking a pause, taking that little time for yourself, or having some kind of practice where you're able to consolidate the information, digest that information, sleep on it. So when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to take a week off and just say, you know what, I'm going to let this go. I don't have the answers. Every time I think about finding the answers, it makes me more confused. When you're finding yourself at that point, give yourself a week break. Give yourself some time off. That week break can actually help you more than it can hurt you. So it can actually make everything feel better. It can give you more clarity rather than putting this extra pressure of time. A week is not going to make or break anything. So if you feel like you're getting to this point where you feel pressured to answer or to make a decision and you're not sure what to do, it's okay to take that break. It's okay to give yourself that. It's not the end of the world. A lot of times you can actually take that break. You can let your doctor know if it has anything to do with treatment plans. It's okay to take that break. And if you don't have that ability for whatever reason, then even just writing things down, I like something called automatic writing. It's something that I've actually been doing recently. It's just asking questions, writing down questions, and then see what comes to you and then write that down. At first, it might seem weird, and you can even write, this feels weird. Whatever comes to your mind, just write it out. It's also very cathartic to release things on paper and journal it. It's a way to clear your mind and to allow yourself to have a little bit of a pause so you're able to digest all of that information in some way. So writing is a great way to help you digest and process information. And it also gets you, it's a great way to get into your own inner wisdom and what is coming out, giving it a little platform, a place to go and express itself. So that's something that I really suggest. Another thing is start a practice of really connecting with your body, because when you take a pause and connect with your body and ask your body what it's feeling, you're going to start feeling guided towards making a decision that is more aligned with you. You're going to get more guided on what is aligned with you and when you're not feeling aligned. Your body is an incredible tool for wisdom. Your body speaks to you. It tells you when things aren't good for your body, like food. It will let you know when you're in the wrong relationship. I've been in the wrong relationship and I've had symptoms It caused me to have breakouts like I've never had before, like cystic, horrible breakouts. I gained weight, lost hair. It was just like everything, the worst possible thing when I was in the wrong relationship. As soon as I left that relationship, it resolved. And I've heard this story from so many people. And the same goes for the wrong job. So your body is constantly communicating. It will start to get it'll manifest a lot more. The more you ignore it, the more those signs get louder and louder. So when you start to get into a habit of tuning into your body throughout the day, just checking in with your body, the more you do that, the more you train yourself to remember. You can even put a reminder on your phone a couple of times a day. The more you do that, the more you get into this habit. And the more you get into this habit, the more you connect with that inner wisdom. So it's amazing, but we have so many tools. There are so many ways to reach your intuition. It's not just one way. It could be through writing. It could be through connecting with your body. That's why I love yoga. Yoga is a very intuitive and also intelligent type of exercise. It has intention. You can really connect with your breath and you become more mindful in doing it. It just naturally gets you more mindful of your body. I find that even when people do acupuncture, if they do yoga and if they've had a yoga practice, they actually respond and feel the energy more quickly. And they also respond to the treatments more quickly. People who feel the energy, the very, very subtle energy, are trained in some way to connect to that subtle energy in their bodies. So by getting quiet and really connecting, that is one amazing way of really centering, so that even if you do get bombarded with a lot of information, you're able to process it from a more clear mind, if that makes sense. Another great way, my last tip, is ground your feet into the earth. When you ground your feet into the earth, it literally does something to your body. And you can actually check it out. There's a movie called The Earthing Movie, and it's free on YouTube, which is also great news. You can all reach and find it. And it's incredible. And it actually shows how there's scientific research that grounding connects you. It actually lowers inflammation, and it's also very calming for the mind. So I would suggest doing that. That's another thing that really helps. And if you can't do that because it's snowing wherever you are or it's cold, you can also get a grounding mat. So a grounding mat does the same thing. So I hope those tips help. I know that the fertility journey is extremely overwhelming. And as I was talking to so many different people, it's just recently, a lot of people have been talking about it. I said, you know what? I need to do an episode. I need to record an episode just speaking about that. Because sometimes when you become aware of something and then you intentionally focus on giving yourself tools to cope with that specific thing, it could change everything. It could really change your mindset, and it can really change the trajectory of your journey when you're coming from a place where you almost have control, at least over yourself. Like, you can't control the journey, but you can control yourself by giving yourself the tools and feeding your spirit what it needs in order to feel more grounded and centered. And when you're coming from that place, it feels a little less rocky, if that makes sense. And that's what I hope for you guys. I hope that you feel more clear, and I hope that you feel more guided. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and have a beautiful day. So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.